Okay, so we're officially getting started. All to order. Did everyone have a chance to look at the meeting minutes from February?
A long time ago, yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I move.
You can't vote if you don't have a quorum, or do we have one now?
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
So we can't approve the minutes.
How many do we need for a quorum?
One.
5.
How many?
How
do-
many?
How
how
many?
many?
5. We
Four?
need 5.
5.
For the
Right.
committee of 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5.
No, we have some observers.
Count.
Yeah, I don't count.
Margaret doesn't count. She's not important.
No. I'm just
Oh,
the
okay.
navigator.
Okay, so you're not doing anything on the minutes.
Okay, check.
Moving right along. Ginger, why don't we just hand it over to you to let us know what's been going on at COA, and if you want to talk about the budget for next year and where things stand.
Okay. Well, it's nice to see everybody, even in this strange configuration. But so let me just, I guess, do a tiny little history here. So we closed on March 13th. I think all of you know that, and we are still closed in terms of the building is still closed to the public. We had mainly been working all from home through April, May, and a good part of June. We are now on a team staffing approach. We have divided the staff into 2 teams. Team A works in the office on Mondays and Wednesdays. Team B works in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and everyone works from home all other days. This is to try to mitigate the effect if anyone should get sick, or if people had to suddenly go into quarantine, then you don't lose your entire staff. There's supposedly the other team would not be affected and could continue to work. We don't know exactly how long team staffing will be in effect. We think until September, but of course it is a little bit dependent on the numbers in Massachusetts and how we're doing. So it has its challenges. Of course, communication is not easy when you don't have the whole team here. But overall, I would say that, we're doing very well considering the circumstances. When we first went out, I think like most of you, we thought that this would be somewhat short-lived. We didn't immediately put all of our programming onto the Zoom platform because we thought we would be back. When it became obvious that we weren't, we put as much of the COA programming as possible onto the Zoom platform. Clearly, certain things, there's nothing you can do. You can't put ping pong onto the Zoom platform, but all of the exercise classes, yoga classes, discussion groups, etc., have been moved to the Zoom platform. One of the big challenges we have is that not all of our seniors have computers, have the internet, or are comfortable using the Zoom. We're doing a lot of coaching about the Zoom platform over the phone, but clearly they can't come in for a computer lesson and we can't go to their house. So we're doing the best we can to have as much participation as possible on Zoom, but not everyone can do that. We do have some donated computers here, so that is not a stumbling block. There are computers that have been refurbished by a volunteer who actually supplies computers both to the Carlisle seniors and to Concord seniors. But they still, of course, need to be able to get onto the internet, and they have to understand how to do it. But sometimes they've got an adult child that can coach them through it if we can get them a piece of equipment and they can get hooked up. So we've done that. We have continued to loan out the durable medical equipment throughout the pandemic. Initially, we were not taking any equipment back because we weren't here to take it back or to do the proper sanitation. But we are taking that back now and loaning it out, and it is still going in and out regularly. Initially, there was no van transportation. About a month ago, we put the one van back on the road for medical appointments only, single ridership. So we are taking one passenger at a time with deep sanitation in between each passenger, and with the drivers and the passenger both wearing masks. Ridership is still a little on the low side right now. I think doctors' offices are not completely opened up yet, and you also have people that are still a little bit hesitant to be going out at all, and they're still doing their telephone calls with their medical folks or their telehealth instead.
So, Ginger, may I ask a question on transportation? You said you're not getting many calls for requests for transportation?
Well, the schedule's not full. I mean, we are taking people every day, but we could be taking more. So we're getting minimal. Remember, we're only going to medical appointments, so we're not taking anyone to the grocery store, or certainly we're not bringing them here because we have no programming going on.
Because the reason I ask is because Fish is struggling whether Fish is going to fold completely or just suspend, because me and most of the other drivers do not feel comfortable driving yet. And we were just wondering how transportation was going. So I was going to ask you, so you're getting requests, but you're not overwhelmed with the request.
No, not yet.
Okay, thank you.
We haven't even put the second driver on yet, the second van. We're not even filling up the first van yet.
Okay, good.
So during the height of the pandemic, when the van was off the road, we were using some younger Concord residents did step up and offer to do volunteer rides for someone that didn't have any family to take them. And so we are very grateful to them, because that allowed some people to get to where they needed to. And we're still using them to some extent, because we don't do medical appointments outside of Concord, so we still use them from time to time. So during the pandemic, there was a lot of coaching about how to get groceries online, how to do curbside pickup, and then if necessary, we assigned them to a volunteer shopper who, once again, we didn't take any volunteers who were, considered to be high risk. You had to, if you self-identified as being in a high risk category, you couldn't volunteer to be a driver, and you couldn't volunteer to go grocery shopping for somebody. We, at that time when we closed down, we basically did a search through our software system and ran a report of everyone who had been active for the previous 6 weeks, and came up with 800 names. So we could have even gone back further, and we would have had more. But so we divided up those 800 people, basically between 4 of us, and those have been our people that we've been trying to be in touch with during the COVID crisis. Now, some of those calls if you called and you found out, oh, I live with my son or daughter, we didn't call again. We didn't call a second time if clearly all of their needs were being met. But other folks we've tried to call, it depended what was going on. Sometimes we called, a couple times a month, and sometimes, every other month, something like that. So we've made, literally thousands of phone calls during the last 5 months that this has been going on, trying to check in on people, not only about what their, physical needs were, like did they have a way to get their prescriptions? Did they have a way to get groceries? That kind of thing, but really just checking in, like how they were doing emotionally. It's very difficult to, it gets depressing. They're not seeing their friends. They're not seeing their family. And so we've had a lot of conversations with folks as they've been struggling to get through this. And, I think a lot of people are very grateful that this Council on Aging has been checking in with them on a regular basis, and that they've had that connection. Most recently, we've begun to do some drive-through events. Once again, every time we realize this is going to go on longer, we try to be creative and come up with some other things. So I came up with a few giveaway things. For instance, we gave away the materials needed for an herb garden. The idea was it gives you something to do at home, something that lifts your spirits, and it's a gift from the COA to the Concord senior. It's to say we're thinking of you, and it was a stay in your car, you have to wear your mask, but they got to see us as we passed these things out, and they got to come to Harvey Wheeler even though they couldn't come in. It was still pleasant experience for them. We also did a giveaway for adult coloring books. We're thinking about other ideas of other giveaways that are low in cost, but send a very nice, caring message. We just started up the Wednesday lunches as a grab-and-go lunch. So we did the first one last Wednesday. We got 36 people. Clearly not the 75 people we typically would get on a Wednesday lunch, but I happened to be out there that day. I mean, people were like, thank you so much for doing this. They really appreciated the opportunity to get out and get a lunch for $2 and loved seeing the staff that happened to be out there that day. So we will continue that, so that is still going on. In terms, what's that, Michael?
Where do people go to eat their lunch?
Oh, they just take it back home. They can't eat here,
Right. So would it be possible to have, this way they're still using the socializing. Is it possible maybe to have social distancing outdoors, like right out playground?
Well, there are a few COAs that have tried a few outdoor programming things, and it did not go well. People did not follow the rules. People were very excited to see each other. And next thing you know, there was hugging going on, and people were not maintaining their distances. And so based on what I've heard from other directors who tried it, I was not inclined to try doing something outside because people do want to talk to each other, and if you get them 6 feet apart, they can't hear each other, and so then they're raising their voices to be heard at, say, the next picnic table, as an example, and then nobody else can hear anything because everyone's sort of raising their voices to be heard at the next table, and just sort of didn't work. So it is a challenge, though. Like, how do you offer that social thing? I mean, I think they liked seeing each other's cars and waving to each other in the line, which is about the best we can do right now, So maybe that'll change. There are some COAs that have just added back the podiatry clinic outside because people are really missing our podiatry clinics, the COA podiatry clinics. We haven't explored that yet. I just heard that last week that another COA brought their doctor back and did it outside, and people were very grateful. They miss having that foot care. So there's some things we might consider. That sounds a little more manageable because you have to have an appointment, and it isn't getting all excited about seeing other people and sort of forgetting about the mask and the social distancing. So we might consider that in the future. So, of course, we're asked constantly, when are we going to open up, all the time. And we don't have the answer to that. Right now, the governor is still recommending that people in this age bracket continue to shelter at home as much as possible because it is a vulnerable age group. And so we aren't open yet. We are not expecting to open, I don't expect to be fully opened until we have a vaccine. There may be some steps in between that we can take with small numbers of people if we can socially distance them. But I really don't expect us to be back to normal operations until everyone's vaccinated, to be honest.
And frankly, that's not likely to happen until the middle of next year.
Correct.
So we could be
Ginger.
looking at almost another year of this.
Boy, is that depressing.
How are people handling it emotionally as far as you can tell?
Well, I'm actually impressed with how resilient they are. And it's amazing what they learned. They learned how to do FaceTime, and they learned how to do Zoom, and their children are coming and standing at the end of their driveways and talking to them. And some people are writing letters and sending cards and things they hadn't done in the past because you
Right.
can't see people in future. And people are picking up the phone and calling their friends, across the country. And, people are trying to find other ways to connect and reconnect. They're trying to, we talk to them sometimes about hobbies that they maybe had never had time for because they were quite active, and maybe they've revived a hobby, that they hadn't, done in a number of years. Overall, I think people have done pretty well, all things considered. There are some people, of course, that have struggled, and obviously for those people, we're making appropriate referrals to a counselor or a therapist if they need that. Of course, they can't see their counselor or therapist in person, but they can at least, do a Zoom counseling session or a phone call.
Good.
So I think moving on to the future, I guess I wanted to share that we are going to have the flu clinic. This year it's going to be a drive-through. It'll be on Tuesday, October 6th. We'll have 4 tents, basically 4 stations. The tents are for the nurses to be under for shade and whatnot, and protection from the elements, because we're going to do it. It's going to be a rain or shine, because it's going to take a lot of work to organize it, and we sure don't want to have to repeat that. So we'll run it for 3 hours this year instead of 2. It will be by appointment only, and there will be a requirement to complete and submit your paperwork in advance. We are not going to be taking time for people to fill out forms and find their insurance card and get the number written on there while people are in line in their cars. So that'll be done in advance. That'll be due about a week before the clinic. And it'll give us some time to call people to say, oh, I see you have an appointment to have a flu shot, but your paperwork's not in, and we're going to need to have that, or we'll have to cancel your appointment. We will put 12 cars through every 15 minutes. That's essentially 3 cars per tent. And we think we can manage that without backing up traffic to Church Street. We had a meeting today with the Concord Police to talk about that, and I think we have that under control, because we definitely want people to have their flu shots. We don't want people getting the flu in the middle of COVID. We don't ever want them to get the flu, but we especially don't want that this year. So people are certainly encouraged to get their flu vaccine at their doctor's office if that's an option. But if for whatever reason it's not, we will be making that available at an outdoor event.
Is there a limited number?
We are going to take a total of, 48 per hour times 3. So yes, there is a limited number. That is going to be it. We will not do any more slots than that. We'll say that in the newsletter so that people know, but we picked that number because that's what we had last year. We had about 150 last year. So we're preparing for about the same amount this year, but no more, just that amount. So that will be going ahead. We do have an interview room built downstairs, and when I say built, meaning that we have plexiglass and a table where a client can sit, and a desk with a computer and a phone on the other side where a social worker could sit if we absolutely need to see someone in person, and we have used that about 3 times. there are certain application processes where it's just very difficult to do it over the phone. Applying for low-income housing, applying for food stamps or SNAP, some of those kinds of things you just plain need to see people in person and help them through that process. So both people have to wear a mask, and there's plexiglass between the two, that, I mean, the building's locked, you ring the doorbell and you're let in. So we've used that a couple of times. So we do have the ability, if we absolutely have to, we can see somebody in person. We are not doing any, what's that?
Let's see, what about the nursing? Is Valerie able to do anything with other than phone consultations or whatever? Obviously you can't do blood pressures and blood sugar.
Not yet,
Yeah.
no.
Right.
Maybe that might be something that we can start with before we're into full operation, is that perhaps allowing that by appointment. The tricky part about that is you got to touch people. You can't stay behind the plexiglass.
Right.
So the contact becomes much closer, so the risk goes up. And we haven't gotten to the point where we are comfortable with that risk, either for the senior or for the staff. So, but we do have that set up. There has been those, I think all of you know, the COA office, a giant piece of plexiglass has been hung in front of Lori's desk, our receptionist, and plexiglass on the side to provide her some protection. The folks that were sharing an office, for instance, Tina and Vicki share an office, they cannot be here on the same days. So they are on different teams, so that there's only one of them in the office at a time. We only had one outreach worker and in an office that holds two, so that hadn't been an issue. And at the moment we have none, because my next announcement is to let you know that Joyce Mcsweeney resigned as the outreach coordinator here. She's been here for over 8 years, but she did take a position at a COA closer to her home. So now we are down 2 full-time outreach people, because I think most of you recall that we, one of our outreach coordinators passed away in January, and we did do a recruitment, and we did offer the position just as the pandemic was getting going in March, and thought we had secured someone, and then in the end that person withdrew, feeling a little uncomfortable about taking a new job in the middle of a pandemic. And so at that point, we were literally moving into working from home. And, of course, that does not make sense to bring a new person on board and ask them to work from home when they need to be trained. So we didn't hire. And so we are recruiting right now, and we are going to be hiring 2 people. The good news is that so far we have 75 applications. So we've never had that kind of a response. It's sadly a little bit of a commentary as to how many people are out of work. And so we are, but because we have to hire 2 people, we're feeling fairly confident that out of 75 people, we should be able to find 2 people that we like and we want to hire. We're going to start interviewing this week. But it's pretty intense for myself and for Nicole and for Lauren right now. We have a lot of people we're trying to keep track of, 2 full-time people's caseload plus the normal people that were already on our caseloads. So we are a little swamped right now, but looking forward to help coming along as soon as we can get someone hired. All of you know that the recruitment process is somewhat time consuming. There's a lot of, checks that have to be done, et cetera. So, sort of hoping we might get somebody middle to end of September, but I might be thinking a little bit too enthusiastically about that. But, so let's see. I think that's a pretty good summary of what's going on. I'd be happy to answer questions about this piece, about the operations, and then I thought I'd spend a few minutes talking about next year's proposed budget.
The only point I want to make is we need to assume this is going to go on for a long time. As you said, when it started, we thought maybe it'll be a month or two. But now it looks like it's going to be, I would guess, spring at the earliest, but probably midsummer. And that we need to plan something for that length of period.
Right. I agree. I mean, we have to be creative and continue to come up with new ideas of what we can do. You know, I think drive-by events are going to be our go-to for a while. You know, we'll still do the Zoom things, but I think we need to be creative about that. And in terms of the giveaways, thankfully, we have had a very successful gift shop that's been bringing in revenue. Of course, they've not been bringing any revenue in over the last 5 months, but they had a healthy balance. And that's essentially what I've been using to pay for these various giveaways. You know, not the Wednesday lunch, that's something different, but some of the giveaways that we have planned will be, you know, being paid for out of those funds. So that's not going to be hitting our general fund budget at all.
Ginger, the one part of the population that I'm concerned about are the ones that live alone, that are isolated, that are not getting out and not having contact with people. And I assume that, you know, you're contacting them by phone.
We are.
But I still worry about that type of person who is living alone, and the Wednesday luncheon was so important to them, or the activities that they participated in is now gone, and they're just by themselves. And I don't have the answer, but I am concerned about those people.
We're concerned about them too. And at the moment, the only thing we can sort of offer is the phone contact. I have heard of one COA that is thinking about an outreach visit, you know, in the driveway. You know, we haven't gotten clearance to go to anybody's house yet. You know, we may go to that, just, you know, that might be the first step. You know, allowing people to go and have an outside visit in someone's driveway if they're capable of coming to their front step or something. But we're not quite there yet. We haven't gone to, there's been a couple of people that have volunteered to be like a caller, but those are some of the most vulnerable people, and I'm a little nervous about them feeling a little overwhelmed with some of the symptoms of deep depression, et cetera. But we're thinking about it. You know, could we put together some kind of a training for volunteers that were willing to make those kind of check-in calls that would give people another contact? But we have not taken that step just yet.
Okay.
Ginger, the COA used to have a lot of lectures and talks, and is there any possibility that community television could help out here, and that they could be recorded and shown
Right.
on community TV?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because we have had several conversations with the Minuteman Media Network, the MMN folks, not only about recording some of our Zoom things that we're doing now, because we are still looking to hire some people, as we have in the past, to put things on and to show that, but to bring back some things previously recorded where we brought in lecturers and show them. They had previously offered us a permanent time slot, Thursdays at 2:00, and that went by the wayside for a while. But we've had a conversation with them recently, and they're willing to bring that back. And we want to publicize that in the newsletter, that this is a standard time that you can tune into your television and see, you know, senior-based programming that was recorded at the COA. And we're hoping that they will put a schedule together of exactly what they will be showing at that time, so people will know. And we also talked to them about, we used to have the Friday cinema. And could they show movies that might appeal to an older age audience on a regular basis? And they are showing some movies that gets into licensing issues. The COA has a license to show motion pictures that I pay for every year, but I can't give my rights through that license to them to show. And they don't, so they can only show movies, basically really old ones, that don't fall under that licensing issue. So they are showing those, I want to say, but it's really late on I forget, it's like 10 o'clock at night or something. And so I did ask, I think a lot of people are not still up at 10 o'clock at night, or they're not going to be up at midnight when it ends anyway, So I did ask for some reconsideration on the timing of when they show some of those things. But so the answer to your question is we are trying to work with them to see what they can do to enhance their programming to help particularly isolated seniors during this time.
Ginger, did you ever think about doing a movie via Zoom? Like you share a screen to show the movie?
We did think about it. Their license won't let us do that. We looked into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a senior, I just want to comment on the success of a few things that Ginger mentioned. For example, Zoom for the exercise and the yoga and great decisions classes have all been really helpful for those of us who can do Zoom, and very successful, I would say. And I myself had a real positive experience with the coloring book that was given away because I brought it here to New York State, where I am now, where all my family was last week. And there's a bunch of little kids, and they were thrilled with the coloring book, which had tear out pages, and they could sit around a table and each do these were brand new colored pencils too, and each color, and I could color too. And so that was a wonderful gift that the COA did. So I just wanted to mention those positive things that I've seen happening that you mentioned, Ginger, and how great they've been.
Well, thank you. That is such a lovely story about you coloring with your grandchildren and turning it into a family event, a simple coloring book, a $3 investment on our part brought your family so much joy. So yeah. Those are wonderful stories,
They kept coming back to it all week.
Nice.
Great. All right. Any other questions before we start chatting about the budget?
Well, I have a couple other questions. I know that you were going to go to the board meeting of the Friends before COVID. I think it was before COVID, but it might have been during COVID, as it turned out. I'm wondering if that ever occurred.
It didn't. It got canceled. It was scheduled for literally the Friday. I think we closed down on Friday, or maybe a Thursday, and it was scheduled, and they canceled that meeting, and so it never happened.
So hopefully that's something at some point will happen.
Yes, I'm sure it will once everyone's meeting normally again. I'm sure they'll invite me again.
Good.
And then I was wondering from before, what happened with the complaint about under 60 disabled not being allowed to be at some event at the senior center in Concord that was mentioned in the last meeting, I believe, in February. I was just wondering what happened with that.
So what Patty's referring to is let me see, was it a congresswoman or was a state senator, state representative office called to say that someone had filed a complaint that they weren't allowed to come here. But at the time I didn't think I knew the age, But then I delved into it by calling the Minuteman ARC folks, and I found out that this person, I believe, had a partner or a roommate, I'm not sure which, that was in fact over 60 and enjoyed coming to the Friday movies and wanted to be able to bring their roommate or their partner, and their partner was not of the proper age yet. And so they were complaining that we were discriminating against people under 60. But in fact, by statute, that's who we're serving, is people age 60 and older. And, you know, I mean, nothing really came of it except for me explaining, you know, why we set that, you know, the legislature set that, you know, back when they created councils on aging, you know, and that we were not arbitrarily deciding, you know, that was set. That's who we're supposed to be serving, and that's who we serve, you know. So nothing more came of that.
But Ginger, they could come on a space available basis.
I would like to see that.
Well, the current policy, they cannot. We would have to change the policy in order to allow that.
Would that be a reasonable change?
I believe it would be too, Michael. I also believe that when a meeting is not filled, if there's with Concord people, if there are openings, that we let other people come. I know other senior centers do that. And it's kind of, I've heard, considered unfriendly when Concord says, no, we can't. And it turns out there's a bunch of spaces. It just seems, Concord first, yes, I can hear that. But when there are spaces left and someone really wants to come to some meeting, I feel we should be more open to flexibility in those things.
Well, I'm happy to bring that up when I have meetings with the town manager's office to see whether or not, you know, a reconsideration of that policy can be made. I do think it opens up a little bit of a can of worms in you know, because we'd have to, you know, as we've had to do with the folks from out of town, you know, because we are currently only open to Concord seniors only most of the time. There are some things they are allowed to join from out of town on a space available basis, and that's written in our policy. But I'm happy to bring it up again, you know.
I'd like to see that broadened for people out of town, having had good reception myself at other towns.
I think in the past people were allowed, because I remember my sister and I going on a cruise one day because there was space. And my brother went, I think, to Tanglewood one day with my mother. This is many years ago, like 20.
Well, if you're going as someone's aide or assistant, that's different. That's allowed, you know.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
But we could take a look at that again. We haven't looked at that in a few years, so it's always good to revisit that from time to time.
That would be great. I appreciate that.
Okay. Other questions? I'll move into the budget.
Ginger, did you want to say anything else about the Friends? Or wait until September?
Yeah, no, I'm good. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so the budget. So as you know, at this point, the budget that I submitted and got worked on is almost a year old now. But the main thing I wanted to share is that the main differences in this budget are that we worked very hard, this year to see what we could do about raising the wages for several of the COA positions that were just very low paid. We have had a hard time. First of all, we don't consider it fair to be not offering a competitive wage. And we've struggled sometimes when we've done recruitments because we're not competitive, and struggled in recruitments and sometimes in retention, where someone is able to make, a higher wage someplace else, and you lose that employee, and that isn't the best as for a team, and it's not the best for our seniors. You want to have your most qualified people, and you want to have your most qualified people here for as long as possible, and you want to be fairly compensating them for the work that they're doing. So thankfully, I have the support of Kate this year as we went to do the budget, and we had proposed several fairly major increases. Some of you know, because you've been on for a while, that some of our grant-funded positions, I can only give a wage increase if I can get the grant to go up, and so thankfully most of my positions that have grant funding have additional funding besides the grant. That might be like 1/3 the state grant, 1/3 community chest, maybe 1/3 general fund, something like that, or some other combination of percentages. So that if you want to give a wage increase, it's not coming out of all one pot. It sort of gets split between 2 or 3 different funding sources. And that has helped a little bit in the past, but I've still been very constrained, like giving people maybe a 50-cent an hour increase, when they're already underpaid, and that has not felt comfortable for many years. So we were prepared to do, a pretty major increase. I can let you know which positions, would be included in that. And I think we're going to be able to, I've not heard, let me put it this way, I've not heard that there is going to be an adjustment to that at this point. So I'm optimistic. I hope that will, that will happen. So the full-time van driver was someone that was going to get, a nice raise. And the part-time, all the drivers, both the full-time and the part-time, but, obviously they're at different wages, but they were each going to get an increase. The nurse was going to receive, an increase as well. It is not easy to maintain, nursing staff, and you got to be, we all recognize it's a different kind of job. There's no way we can compete with, what an ICU nurse is making or anything like that. It's a different kind of job, but at the same time, you can't be so far off from what they can make in the open market that you struggle with that. It's also how you tell your staff that they're doing a good job. That's the way it works. You compensate people when, yes, you offer them compliments and you give them a nice review, but it's nice when it comes with a wage increase as well. The activity coordinator would also receive an increase, and both outreach workers would receive an increase. The social service supervisor would get an increase, and the volunteer and public relations coordinator would get a raise, a substantial raise. Other people would be eligible for their normal merit increase or cost of living increase if the town votes to do that. But these positions that I have mentioned would get an increase that's above and beyond. And a lot of those positions that I mentioned are on grant funding. And if you're in a grant-funded position, you do not automatically get any of these other increases that, for instance, I'm fully funded by the general fund. I don't have any grant funding associated with my position. So if I earn a merit increase or if I am eligible for a cost of living increase, I get that. If you're in a grant-funded position, you do not automatically get those increases, because if the grant money's not there, you can't have that. So this bumps them up in a way that I hope makes it more competitive. For instance, what we did with this current recruitment that's going on right now, we took, we're advertising that for the proposed new wage increase, so that, and I think that's partly why that we have so much interest in that position because it's starting to pay a little bit better now. Some of you might remember that when I came here, the outreach workers were making like $12 an hour. And these are professionals, you know, and I can remember one of my first conversations with the town administration, because both of those positions were vacant when I got here. There was several vacant positions, but I just said, I cannot hire anybody for $12 an hour to do this, you know, and they raised it to $15. So my very first hire here was at $15 an hour. And I've been plugging away at it, you know, year after year, a little bit here, a little bit there. And we're currently advertising at $23 an hour. So we've come a long ways, you know. I'm not saying that 23 is still enough. I'm still willing to, you know, fight for more and advocate for more. I think they deserve more, but we've made good progress. You know, we just need to keep going. You know, we've had to do a lot of recruitments here, you know. It's very time consuming, not only to hire, but to train. You know, you really want to get to the point where you can have some nice longevity on your staff, and people are being fairly compensated for the great job that they're doing. So, those are the major changes. Honestly, everything else in the budget is pretty much the same. You know, there's really no more no more differences related to that.
Can you run through the list of the positions that are getting a raise? The van drivers, the nurse, outreach coordinators.
The activity coordinator, the social service supervisor, and the volunteer/public relations coordinator.
Oh, public relations. Okay, thank you.
Now, again, when you say they're getting a raise, it is proposed. Obviously, nothing is going to happen until the budget passes at town meeting.
Are you currently operating on last year's budget?
Yes, I think the way they are legally allowed to do it is you're operating on 1/12 of per month, you know, of last year's budget. So nobody got any raises July 1 of this year. No matter what your funding source was, there were no wage increases on July 1, which would have been normal.
Will the increases be retroactive when they pass town meeting?
I don't know. I haven't heard yet whether they will be retroactive. Can the Finance Committee representative speak to that? Do we know yet? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
No, I haven't heard anything about retroactive. It's literally working on a 1/12 budget until town meeting. I can ask.
Yeah, I guess the question is if the budget passes in September and it includes those wage increases for whoever in any department, would those raises be retroactive to July 1, or would they be effective the day of town meeting? I guess that's the question. And I don't know that you know the
answer. Is after town meeting, but I could be wrong. I'll check. We have a short meeting. We've had very, very long meetings lately. We have a short meeting this Thursday before the public hearings on Monday and Tuesday for the town and the schools. I'll mention it and see if I can get that information back to you.
Other questions that people have?
I have a question. You said that the grant-funded positions don't get an annual raise. So how are you arranging for these people to get a raise if they're grant-funded?
They can only get a raise if I'm successful in getting more money out of the grant. So for instance, those positions that are partially funded by the Community Chest Grant, when I write a grant to them, I would have to ask for more money in order to accommodate that wage increase. And then you don't know until like usually the June, which is just the month before the fiscal year starts, whether or not you've been granted those funds. So what I've been trying to do is some grant funding, such as the Community Chest, I've been working hard to try to keep that stable and not always be asking for more every year, because there's certainly a limit to how much they're able to raise. So I might ask for another, let's give an example. Say 20 hours come out of the general fund and 10 come out of formula grant, 10 come out of Community Chest, as an example. I might ask for the general fund to cover 21 hours, and then still leave the others at 10, but raise the wage, so that I might still actually be asking for the same amount of money from the granting funding source, but essentially the general fund side absorbs some of the extra, if you will, so that I'm not bottom line asking them for more money every year to accommodate those wage increases. So it's a little bit of math gymnastics when it's time to write the budget and write all, we have other funding sources, and I have to keep track of the formula grant, the Community Chest, as well as we still are taking money from a bequest that we had several years ago from Mr. Florio, which is going to partially fund one of the outreach positions. And we've been way back when we got that bequest, I had permission I didn't have full-time outreach workers at that time, to use it to make one of my outreach workers full-time. And we've been drawing down on that a little at a time, going down on that and raising raising the general fund side, so that eventually when that bequest is gone, the town is fully funding it. But it's been a gradual increase over many years. So it was not as solid of a hit at one time. It's been slow. Each year at a time they do a little bit more, because that money eventually will be used up.
I have to go because I have another Zoom meeting.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, Ann.
Okay. Take care.
Before you
Be
go,
safe.
do you have anything to say about Concord
I also
after
have
60?
Well, one quickly after Concord after 60, we've had a couple of Zoom meetings. We're having a steering committee meeting tomorrow afternoon. On other ones, we'll see. We've been making phone calls to try to keep in touch with people, but we still are, plodding along like everyone else. And Zoom has helped, but it's, we plan to do something in September, and we'll see how things go. So it's still working, just like everything else these days.
I also have to go at 5:30, just so, and I do have very little information, but some about the Concord Housing Authority.
I'm gonna have to leave. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Ann.
Are you finished, Ginger?
Yeah, no, I'm just answering questions at this point. And I also just wanted to say that I know Michael had asked about sending the budget out ahead of time for you guys to review, and I didn't end up doing that. One reason was I wanted to be certain that there wasn't any proposed changes to it, and that I didn't end up sending you something that wasn't accurate. And second, honestly, I'm just swamped. Just put it out there. I'm just so busy. But any of you should feel free at any time to call me. I'm happy to talk about it. I want you to feel comfortable out in the community if you're asked, feeling like you have the knowledge and the information to share with someone in the public about the process and what the numbers are. So feel free to contact me if you need something more specific. Okay? Okay.
Patty, do you want to say something about Concord Housing Authority?
Just that I spoke with Mary Ann, who still is the Concord Housing Authority chief, and she would like to stay in that position, I think, until a couple things get squared away, but they are looking for someone to replace her, and because she tried to retire a year ago, and so she really wants to retire also, but she's hanging in there until perhaps a couple things get solved. One being the Giroux property, something going on there. They've had a couple Zoom meetings, which I did not know about. But there is another Zoom meeting this Thursday, and so I hope to go to that. But the main thing they've been discussing is whether they should hire somebody who's trained to find a replacement for her. That's what she told me. That was the main thing that's been going on. So there isn't a lot to report, but just that I am keeping up with them.
Very good.
What is Mary Ann's last name?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. I can probably look it up, don't worry.
Anybody else have anything to contribute?
I could give a little, am I muted? I can give a Minuteman report. Since the pandemic started, the numbers of people who were getting help at home through Minuteman declined quite dramatically. Pretty much anybody who could do without the help, if there was any other way they could get the help from family or friends or do without, they were doing that. People who needed a lot of help at home and had no other options were obviously keeping their help, but that is just now beginning to perk back up. People are starting to look to have their home healthcare aides come back. It's been extremely challenging also because so many of these home health aides were affected by the fact that there's no school and no daycare, and that is likely to continue, I suppose. So it all has been kind of a perfect storm. And again, the people are just coming out. Some of them are coming back into the workforce. The ones who have childcare and were just afraid have been coming back into the workforce. And I've heard from in other meetings that I've been to that these aides have all gotten the virus and gotten over it and gone back to work. And now I guess theoretically they could be immune. So, so anyway, as a result of this, there's a big budget glut, but that money's restricted by the state. So the way it works is if we don't spend that money, we have to give it back. And so that's entirely possible that that's what will happen. The state gave Minuteman, let me just see, I'll find my notes, some big stimulus money, and they also applied for the PPP grant that they were using. Protective Services had a big drop. They don't believe that that's due to any kind of decline in abuse of seniors, but just that there's nobody visiting some of these people who may be in abusive situations, you know, the Meals on Wheels and things like that. Those drivers are not all coming. Some of the money that the state gave Minuteman is they're able to use it to buy computers for seniors and other technology, particularly so they can take advantage of telehealth. They're having to pay more Meals on Wheels drivers because they're having a hard time getting volunteers, which is understandable. Another big positive is that fundraising boomed. People just started giving money to the emergency fund. They raised $150,000, which is huge, just in individual donations. And that is also money that's available to help seniors get technology in their homes that they need. I think that, I mean, there's a lot of meetings to report on, but that's basically what we've been hearing every month. There's very few staff members in the office. They're working on getting more staff in the office, but I know none of you have ever been there, but the way that building is set up, it's impossible to social distance. Almost very, very few people have their own offices. They sit kind of in rows of cubicles, but they're smaller than a cubicle. They're like side by side. It's like in a library, carrels. Do you know what library carrels are? That's basically what they sit at. So there's no protection or anything. So that's going to be really a challenge. They'll probably never be able to bring everybody back in that space, in that office space. There'll probably have to be people who just work from home. So that's about it.
Okay. Carol emailed me about the tax preparation that they were starting on before all this happened. She said they filed 62 tax returns and they answered questions for 4 clients. There were 53 others who had signed up before COA was closed and they had to find other help. She also said that AARP sent out a survey to ask volunteers whether they would be willing to continue to volunteer next year if we were in the same situation, but that is not, they haven't gotten results back from that survey. That was it.
That you said they did 52 tax returns before they closed?
No, 62.
62. Okay.
And they had 53 others who they had to turn away.
I just found the housing director's last name. It's Nelson. Mary Ann
Thank you.
Mary Ann Nelson.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything else to discuss?
I was wondering, did finance have something you wanted to share with us for updates other than what we already asked you? No, guess not.
Andrew, do you have anything to share from the finance committee? Oh, you're muted. Ginger, can you control mute too on participants?
Yeah.
No, no, I think it's just, it's very hard on everybody. All of the budgets, all of the information, everything compressed. And hopefully town meeting will happen September 13th at the high school outside. And you know, and then we move on. But everybody is having a very, very difficult time with, you know, just listening to you people and the issues you've been dealing with. It's everybody. And one is going to affect the other. I mean, what happens with the schools is going to affect a lot of employees and whether they can work or not work. And yeah, it's tough. But I don't have does your budget fall under the town manager?
Right. This is the deputy town manager, human services budget.
Yeah. Okay. So that we've had several presentations on the town's budget and then the public hearing coming up. I don't know if you're contributing anything at the public hearing.
I'm not. Usually Deputy Town Manager Kate Hodges does the presentation on behalf of all of her folks, the COA, veterans, community services, you know, all of those are her departments. She generally does that presentation on behalf of those folks, those divisions.
Yeah, she does a very good job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. I don't have anything else to contribute. I will see if I can find out anything about the 1/12 budgets and retroactive raises.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in, or zooming in, I should say.
Carol, I have one question. The last meeting in February, if you can remember, we had a presentation from the Long Range Planning Committee. Have we heard any more from them since?
I haven't, but I wasn't at that meeting.
Are you talking about when they came to talk about the StarMet site?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a
I haven't
survey-
heard anything.
There was a survey that went out, I think, in June. I don't know if many people actually filled it out. I sent an email at the time. And Kristen's not here. Her husband is in charge of that committee. Andrea?
The feedback that we've had at was that the committee is very disappointed because they've had very little input from the community, and they were hoping for more input by this time, and they're not sure at this point how they're moving forward, because they really need more community input. That's the last I heard.
Were they extending the response time for their survey?
I don't know. I don't know whether they're going to try something different. It's just very, very low, too low,
Mm-hmm.
the response.
Okay. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I guess I was wondering whether you guys are feeling like you want to continue to meet monthly by Zoom like we usually do, or you know, go a couple of months, or how we want to proceed going forward. I know this was sort of a catch up since we had not been meeting for 5 months, but I'm just wondering what people feel, or maybe because there's so few people on, maybe we want to send an email and ask people about how often they feel like they want to meet.
I can send out an email. I didn't get many responses when I set up this meeting. So I'm not sure what's going on. Whether people aren't checking email. I don't know. I can send an email. So our appointments go through town meeting. I'm at the end of my term, so I would have to be renewed. I think somebody else is at the end. I think it's Arthur. Oh no, maybe it's Milton.
I think it might be Anne. Anne, I think, is also going off. I don't know, but we need to check that out, I guess.
No, Anne's not going off, but she
Who's
said
Anne?
she probably would.
Oh, okay. She has indicated that she would like to go off, I believe.
Right, yes.
Her term is through 21.
Right.
But yes, she did want to go off. Let's see. Yeah, Arthur is finishing and Milton is finishing. I don't know if this is their second term. Does anybody know if?
Arthur is his second term.
Okay, so you can only have 2 terms, right?
Milton is his first term.
Okay.
But a point of information, if you skip 1/3 of the meetings, you're not eligible for renewal.
Yeah, I don't think we'll keep Milton on because he has missed so many meetings. So Terry Stokes did finish her appointment, didn't she, Ginger? Do you know?
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay, I have not heard from Grazia. I thought she was interested. But she didn't say she was coming to any meetings, and I don't think she was ever appointed. I have a feeling it's going to be a challenge to fill the board, but I will contact someone.
I think under these conditions, not too many people are interested.
I know. I think I still have a list that you gave me, Ginger, so maybe I will look at that. If anybody knows anyone who might be interested in serving on the board, let me know. And we'll see if we can recruit some members.
I'm surprised our 2 new members haven't shown up because they've been fairly conscientious.
I know.
Kristen and Christine.
Well, this meeting was, I tried to schedule it so many times, and maybe people were just a little confused. But it had to do with posting on the website. I would send the agenda to the clerk. And we almost didn't have this meeting because I realized on Thursday, like at 2 o'clock, that it hadn't been posted yet. And I had sent it on Tuesday. And so thank goodness Kate Hodges got someone to post it for me, or we wouldn't be meeting today.
Yes.
One agenda just fell by the wayside, wasn't posted. Then we had our little snafu last time where we didn't have the right link on the agenda. So, maybe that turned people off. I'm sorry, I did the best I could, but these Zoom things are a little complicated.
Well, now that we have this new method of Kate allowing me to use her credentials to use her sign-in ID, I would think that would be okay going forward unless she needs it at this time. End of day, I think, is pretty good. But there's also a question of how often we need to meet, given that the COA is not operating fully at this time, but you may still be interested in how we're doing. So it's up to you. I'm happy to do whatever you want to do. We can meet, we could go to meeting quarterly. I don't know what you want to do.
Well, I think we should have a meeting in September.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then maybe at that meeting, we'll decide what the frequency will be.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only question is it before or after town meeting?
Oh, we have to be careful about that because we don't want to conflict with that, so hold
Town
on
meeting
here.
was supposed to be the 13th. And we're the third Monday normally. So if we stick to that schedule, I think we're okay.
It would be the 21st.
Well, by then we should know better what happened at town meeting, and there
Yeah,
may be some more things to discuss related to that.
makes sense.
Okay. So we'll plan for a meeting on the 21st.
Okay.
Same time?
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock work for people. It's slightly better for me than the 5 o'clock one.
Better for me.
Yeah.
What about you, Margaret? Can you make that work, the 4 o'clock?
Yep, if I have enough notice, I can definitely do that.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we adjourn.
No motions because there's no quorum.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. This was a good meeting.
All right.
It was very
Bye.
informative.
Nice to
Okay.
see everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.